It is April 2nd, 2019. It is approximately 3:15 in the afternoon. We are at Loyola University Chicago Information Commons, room 218. I am Lee Manko, interviewing Frank DiPiero. All right, so Frank, would you like to start us off by telling me a brief background of your life?
Okay, brief, if I can be brief. Born in Chicago, Italian-American 100%. Grew up in an Italian-American section area. So I'm not like one of those guys that's like searching his roots. My roots have been embedded from day one out of the womb, and loved it. It was, I kind of grew up like, seemed like everybody was Italian-American. I mean, it's just the way it was. Everybody was Catholic, everybody was Italian-American. So that was very good. And if you want me to like fast forward, I own a small business in Chicago, married for approaching, I believe, 28 years the end of this month. I have 2 children that are 19 and 20, and things are good.
Awesome. All right, so you grew up in the North Harlem Avenue area, right?
Correct.
All right.
Around Grand Avenue, Grand and Harlem. I born, raised, and still live around Harlem Avenue to this day.
All right, so what was that like growing up as a kid there? What was life like? What were your childhood activities?
I mean, it was good. It was the kind of thing where like, my parents' friends were Italian, and all kidding aside, like our doctor was Italian, the guy who did our taxes was Italian, the guy who cut my hair was Italian, our lawyer was Italian. It's just the way it was. So, for me, that was just regular life. It was odd not to be with, and there was a little bit of a sense of, I don't want to say like us against them, but there was a lot of pride back then. I don't see it as much now, but we were like, there was pride. You were like genuinely proud. Like, I'm Italian, and that meant something. And, St. Joseph's Day was a big thing, and we wore red, and, it was good. It was very good, yes.
All right, tell me a little bit about St. Joseph's Day.
Okay, so, I do remember there was, I remember it was like, big because, 2 days prior to that is St. Patrick's Day, so that was for the Irish, and I'm talking like as a little kid that like, the Irish were proud, and then 2 days later we were proud, and like I said, we always wore red, and there was, St. Joseph's tables, which there still are to this day, but like I just remember like wearing the red, and I just remember this big pride, and like, FBI, full-blooded Italian, and CIA, certified Italian-American, and it meant something. I knew when St. Joseph's Day was coming.
Oh, gotcha. So the Italian-American population in your area growing up was pretty big, I can tell.
Yes.
So did you notice a change in demographic as time went on? Because I know a lot of Italians started moving out of the city, right?
Absolutely. There's a couple of things. People moving away, that Italian neighborhood thing, it's very small, very few even, lay claim to something anymore. Definitely moving away, there's no doubt. People moved out west, they moved far. And, I don't know if this is where you want to go with this, but, intermarriage, you know what I mean? And, why is that more popular? Okay, well, think back, 50, 60, 70 years ago. You lived in a neighborhood that was like all Italian. Well, odds are we're pretty good you were going to marry an Italian because that's the only, if I was a guy, that's the only girls I knew. If I was a girl, that's the only guys I knew. Now, you fast forward, and the neighborhood is not Italian, so now there's everybody. And not that there's anything wrong with that. I don't want to be, like I'm bashing anybody. But if we're talking strictly from an Italian-American point of view, yeah, intermarriage, moving away, lack of Italian neighborhoods, lack of pride, lack of identity, lack of a lot of things.
Yeah, so how did the ethnic groups get along then? And like what were their relations like with one another as time went on?
Being brutally honest, I think in the 70s got them old, but I think in the 70s it was, especially in Chicago, it was segregated a little bit.
Okay.
And even like I said, you know, I didn't live in the inner city by no means, but you know, there was this, you know, we're Italian, they're Irish, you know, they're this, they're that. Although I think there was more respect back then, and I think there was less violence and less, you know, all of this stuff, even though we were separate, but everybody knew their place, and I just feel that way. You know, now it's all mixed, but there seems to be a tremendous amount of hatred, and everybody's upset, and everybody's angered, and it's kind of sad.
Yeah. So was it? So I know it wasn't uncommon for Italians to face discrimination earlier in the 1900s, but how was that how was discrimination during your time growing up in Chicago?
I mean, for me, I mean, definitely Italians and the major immigration in those days were treated, from what I have heard and from what I've read, and, you know, history speaking, were treated like the bottom of the barrel, like just horrible. As far as my childhood, I don't recall much discrimination. I mean, you know, there's always this little bit of that mob stereotype with a lot of people. It's probably a lot less today, like your generation. I'm sure, you know, growing up in Aurora and you're 19, I don't think the mob was like much that you knew about, just because of, it doesn't even exist really anymore. And, you know, but in the 70s, there was a lot.
Yeah. So what was the status of crime like growing up? Was it a really big thing, or just kind of?
I'll be honest with you. Okay, so the area I grew up with in, petty crime didn't exist.
Okay.
Petty crime didn't exist probably because there was a presence, let's say. But I am by no means saying that my ethnic group are a bunch of criminals. If they started doing numbers, which I've seen studies on, it's such a tiny fraction of the amount of people. But unfortunately for my ethnic group, Italian Americans and Italian, you know, the mob just seem to like, it has taken over like Hollywood, and they're just fascinated with it. So it comes to the American public's mind, but in reality of our people, it is a fraction. So it's not that represents us. However, having said that, growing up in the 70s in the area I did, the presence that was there did not affect my life in the slightest. However, yeah, there was less of that petty crime stuff because you didn't do that in those areas, because if you did, it was going to be bad.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I take it, did your parents or grandparents experience much interactions with that stereotypical mobster situation?
If they did, I don't know, really, I'll be honest. You know, and it's not that I did either, you know, and I'm not, you know, there's some people in my ethnic group that, you know, they look for that, you know, defamation, and, you know, you offended me, and I'm not like that, you know what I mean? Do people say stuff? Yeah, but you gotta have thick skin in this world.
Absolutely. So let's shift gears a little bit. So you said that your grandparents on both sides came from Italy, correct?
Right.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that. Why they came?
Well,
they came from?
Okay, so I know both my grandfathers were soldiers in World War I for Italy. Okay, and they were married and they had kids, and then they came here. So, you know, I'm gonna totally assume the old, you know, for a better life financially, you know, because sometimes that better life thing, I don't think in Italy was so bad. I don't think it's that bad today. In fact, it's quite good. It's more of a financial thing. There definitely is way more opportunities, and, you know, a lot of them are coming from these very small towns, and they ended up in Chicago. Now, I know, like my mother's side, there was a lot of people from their town in Chicago. Naturally, you follow those people. My father's side, not really at all. I don't know how they ended up in Chicago because the people from their town in Italy don't live in Chicago, so I don't know how they ended up in Chicago. But what I'm getting at is you're coming to this majorly big city as opposed to a town that has maybe 2,000 people. So.
Yeah. All right. So did they then attain citizenships when they came to America? I mean, to your knowledge.
To my knowledge, don't really know. I don't think they did. I know my father told me that his parents, his family was planning on going back to Italy. I don't think they attained citizenship, to my knowledge.
Yeah. So what time period was that around that they came?
They came like in the early 30s.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
Gotcha.
a long time ago.
All right.
Yeah.
So, do you know what their life was like since they would then, I assume, live through the Depression and World War II eras? Do you know much of what that was like?
Yeah,
for them?
I mean, a little bit. I shouldn't say yeah. I mean, my father's side, my grandfather just worked simple jobs, factory jobs. He never really had anything. I mean, my father grew up with nothing, basically, which I think led to a generation of a lot of guys that were really hungry to make it, to make success. And a lot of guys that he grew up with were big successes because they grew up with nothing.
Yeah.
They really did. My mother's side was a little better off. Didn't come here with anything, but my grandfather was a butcher by trade and got into business. And, for the times he did okay. Whereas my father's side was, like I said, pretty poor.
Gotcha. So, how did your parents meet then?
Okay. If I recall, I'm the youngest
Okay.
by far. Like my parents were a little older when I was born. But the way they met was my father had a good buddy, and my mother was a twin. And his good buddy was gonna go out with this woman, and she had a twin sister, so he brought along his buddy, my dad, and they met, and that's how it happened. Yeah.
So, since I believe I read on a website somewhere that your father came from Bugnara?
Bugnara. He
Sorry.
did.
And that's more of the middle part of Italy.
Exactly. That's in
and-
Abruzzo, which is like central Italy. Yes.
Yeah, and then your mother's family came from, I'm going to try not to butcher this, but Sant'Ambrogio?
Sant'Ambrogio, yes.
Yeah, in Sicily, which
Correct.
is southern Italy. So,
Correct.
was there any disapproval from your parents' for
Well,
the marriage between the two?
I don't know if it was the regional thing. I think they're all gone anyway, so I guess I could say whatever I want. My dad had told me like that I don't think they were thrilled with him. I don't know if they thought he was good enough because he was just a real poor kid. And like I said, for the times, my mother's family was a little bit okay, you know what I mean? Nothing glamorous, I wish they were, but a little bit okay compared to this poor kid that didn't have anything. So they were a little bit like in that ways, more of a finance kind of a way, I would think. I don't think so much because they were Sicilian, so it wasn't that they looked down on him because he was from Abruzzo, I don't think so. But, not that stuff doesn't exist, but not in this case.
Gotcha. So, what was the quality of life for your parents, I guess, more into their adulthood, raising you and your siblings then?
Well, my grandfather had a typical Chicago bungalow.
Okay.
And when my parents, I don't know exactly when, but they definitely lived upstairs, and my siblings were all raised upstairs. So there was just a staircase that went down into my grandparents' section of the house, because it really wasn't probably a typical apartment, because it was a house, it was single family. And I gotta be honest, it probably was great. It was probably a great upbringing to to live with your grandparents below, and like I said, the neighborhood back then, that was the Montclair section of Chicago, and everybody was Italian, and it was probably just really great, to be honest. A simple time when, better time.
Yeah, and so you said that you're currently the owner of Jerry's Diner,
Jerry's Grill.
or Jerry's Grill, my
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
And that was established.
My
by
father
your
started
father.
that in 1963.
Okay.
So we are at 56 years in the same location, same corner, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'm
So-
tired just thinking about it.
Was that your family's main means of income? That
Well, kind of no. My dad was a real go-getter. He never even finished high school. He joined the Marines, 17 years old. I think he lied on the thing. And he, like I said, there was a hunger back then, and they were street guys, and they were, give me a guy with a good attitude who wants to get ahead. And usually he's gonna. So he owned pieces of a lot of these different kind of like grills and food businesses. And this particular one, he had a partner, and for about the first 20 years, this other guy basically ran it. So that was not his main thing. He had a lot of different jobs. He like I said, he was a go-getter.
All right. Let's shift to family life a little bit.
Okay.
So, both of your parents were Italian.
Mm-hmm.
Did you grow up learning English or Italian?
No, English totally. Yeah, the very first time I went to Italy, I was 19 years old, and it was 1986. And I have to be honest with you, I knew sentences. There again, when somebody's got a real drive, when I went to Italy, I just loved it. And I honestly picked up a lot of Italian just being there and through making friends and girlfriends. And so my Italian just skyrocketed.
Right.
Yeah.
So, was Americanization a big thing for your parents then growing up, or you more so, or a bit of both, would you say?
I don't know. I think it's inevitable. It just happens.
Mm-hmm.
And as a professor I know here at Loyola always says, every day that goes by, we're one less day removed from Italy. So when you pass a generation, and then you pass a second, you pass a third, and you pass a fourth, wow, that's a long time away from Italy and all that culture and even the language and everything. And it just, you become more Americanized. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but, ethnically speaking, it pays a toll. I mean, it does take away from that, yes.
All right. So, what was a typical day growing up like for you
Growing up?
with your family?
I guess just nothing exciting, nothing major. I mean, we were just simple. I mean, we didn't go on vacations. We didn't travel. We didn't do that kind of stuff. It was just, around the house, around the neighborhood, and that's about it.
Yeah. Did your mom do any sort of profession, or was she just a stay-at-home mom?
Basically, growing up, stayed home mom.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did you get the, typical Italian dinners pretty often?
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
we basically ate home, and pasta, I mean, we ate a lot of it, and, yeah, so basically that stuff. We weren't the type that, we have Mexican night at home, that didn't exist.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So, what was your grade school to high school experience like being in Italian?
I mean, it was good. It was good. It was all good, just normal stuff. And I think honestly, when I went to Italy, so the first time I went, I was 19. It was a study abroad program in the summer for 5 weeks.
Okay.
And I ended up stretching it to maybe 2 months. And I was really lucky. I had a friend that I grew up with who was born here, but had gone to Italy at this point at 19, maybe 23 times. and he had a girlfriend, and the parents had a place out there, and he was about as Italian as you could be for not living in Italy. So I was so fortunate to go with him, and then he kind of dropped me off. It was in Florence for this program with the college, and then I'm pretty sure he even picked me up after. So that was really a life-changing experience.
And you studied abroad twice in Italy, right?
Well, what happened was when I went that first time at 19, and I just loved it, I found a way to go back. So in 86 was this. In 87, so I go home in like August. I do the Loyola Rome Center program in the spring of 87. So I went back like maybe 6 months later, and I stayed 5 months this time. Like I said, I loved it, and I even went back the following summer. So I had a stretch where I was just in Italy a lot because I just adored it. And the funny thing about that, the funny thing about that was my whole life, you said, what are you? I'm Italian. I'm Italian. That was just a no-brainer. Now I go to Italy, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not. How can I say I'm Italian when I'm with these people? You know what I mean? I have an American passport. I mean, there's no way. And that was like when I realized at 19 that like I was Italian American.
Okay.
And I mean that. Like up until that point, I was Italian. I mean, it was just a period. That was how it was. And I think a lot of people too. And then I realized like, no, I'm this whole other thing, you know what I mean? Which yet I'm not like American, but I'm not Italian. I can't say that. I don't live in Italy. I didn't, you know what I mean? And I realized it was very eye-opening. Yes.
For sure, sounds like it. So let's backtrack a little bit. So were you a first-generation college student?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And you attended.
Quite a few. So I went to 4 colleges, and I graduated in 4 years, which I don't even know how I did that. I kind of did them all. I went away to a state school out of high school. Wasn't for me. Okay, I'm a city guy. I'm not college experience away. Came back home, went to like a junior college. Then I went to, I guess, a private Catholic school. At the time it was called Rosary College, which now is called Dominican University. And I went to Rosary for a semester, and then I went to Loyola of Rome for a semester, and then I finished that last year at Rosary and graduated. 4 schools, 4 years.
So what did you study during all that time?
I majored in political science.
Okay.
I wasn't, you know, which was meaningless, to be honest. It didn't. I never did anything with school. You know what I learned. I wasn't even focused like what I was really. You know, I guess I was just having a good old time going to Italy, and I just loved it. And I almost, you know, what's funny with me is like I was becoming a better Italian. Which, I mean, not to sound conceited, but I became pretty good at that.
That's really great, though. So would you say your experiences, more so than your studies, contributed to what you would later on do in your future? Absolutely.
Just even as a person, as everything, for sure. And like I said, that experience, you know, when I went to study abroad, you wouldn't understand. This is pre-internet, computers, cell phones, everything. So when I go to Italy, it's not, I mean, I'm calling home once a month. I mean, what are they going to do for me? I mean, it was a very big growing up experience. I mean, I'm in Rome. I'm walking around the streets of Rome in the middle of the night, and you know, you're on your own and stuff. So it was a growing up experience. It was a tremendous experience. I mean, the whole thing. It was great.
All right, and so then you eventually became an internet radio host, right?
Well, I have a podcast.
A
podcast,
right?
yes.
So that started in 2013, correct?
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. I actually also, the high school where my kids went to, that I'm actually on the school board and my wife's involved. We're just involved people. Like, I can't sit still. And I had they had a TV studio at the high school. So I also had like this TV show where I was like a talk show. And that was, about with the school stuff. But I started doing this show that they taped. They put it on the radio, the high school radio, and it went on a website. And then, I'm not technologically good at all, but somebody's like to me, it's a podcast. I go, what the hell is a podcast? So I didn't even know that word, and that evolved into doing this Italian American podcast, which I've had help from many friends to get a website, to all of this stuff, and now currently my son helps me with all this, thank God. And I have this genuine Italian American podcast, which I love to do, and it's. I hope it's a means for retaining history of Italian American accomplishments, and there's so many things that I've realized. You get older, you get smarter because you just live and you have experiences, and there's so many things that we have done that aren't taught in school. They're not taught at home anymore because that whole scene is gone too. And it's like they're just going to go away. And I'm hoping with the podcast use as a means for that, and also for just interesting stories and cultural things and everything. So I love to do it. Yes.
All right. Did you do anything before that? This has been your life, kind of.
Well, I've been involved with the Italian American community, so to speak. I was also on the committee in this very small way. I don't want Mr. Candeloro to think I was the guy, he's the guy, but in a small way, I was on the committee to help start an Italian American Studies program at Loyola University, which I'm quite proud of.
Yeah.
Very proud of it.
Yeah, so, tell me a little bit more about these various leadership roles, because you've been involved in everything, it feels like.
Well, not everything, but so I was on the committee for that. Once upon a time, my wife has a hair salon for about 28 years now on Harlem Avenue, and we used to have an the Harlem Avenue Italian and American Business Association, and I was president of that, which that whole thing is business-wise, but it's ethnic-wise, it's my neighborhood-wise. So there's I don't do a lot of things that there isn't a lot of pride coming out of me. Okay, I'm currently a director of a group called Italidea Midwest. Now Italidea receives money from Italy to fund Italian language and cultural programs at the grammar school level or middle school level. Which, when I was asked, to be on it. I immediately answered, yes, thank you, for sure, it's an honor. And, am I busy? Yeah, I'm busy just like the next guy, but for things that are important, I'll make time. Okay, so I thought that was important. I'm a big advocate of the Italian language and of the culture and of defending what's left of our things, for lack of a better description, such as the Balbo Monument and Balbo Drive, and which Italo Balbo was accomplished this incredible aviation feat in 1933 World's Fair here in Chicago. And the way I look at so many things in life is, and unfortunately I don't think a lot of people look at it like I do. Balbo died, 70 years ago, and I don't think the country of Italy is going to be worrying about the Balbo Monument here in Chicago. So to me, it's our responsibility and duty as the Italian Americans here today in 2019, because if we don't defend it, nobody will. And if we don't take on this responsibility, well then, how do you look yourself in the mirror? If you're so proud, because a lot of people, they're pride, but on a different level. I take it to the guts and the heart of it, okay? And if you're so proud, how do you not defend one of our ancestors' tremendous accomplishment, and not to mention it's here in Chicago. So you got a double thing here, and I would defend it. You know what I always say? I don't know if we're going to win when we do defend these things, but if I'm going to go down, I'm going down fighting. I know that, because I couldn't live with myself. You give your all with something and you fail, well, you fail. But at least you gave your all. But if you don't, then you live with regrets, and that's a horrible thing to have. So.
Yes. Real quick, speaking of the Balbo Monument and the street, how do you feel about those who are opposed to it?
Well, in a nutshell, truth, absolute truth. Okay. The controversy surrounding Italo Balbo is because he had an association with Benito Mussolini. Now, at the time of his arrival, Benito Mussolini in the country of Italy, they were fascists, but there was nothing wrong with that word because in Italy in those days, from what I've been told from really smart people, you were either fascist or you were communist. So they were friends of America. And he came here and he was received with the utmost respect and honor, and he had lunch with the President of the United States, and he had a ticker tape parade in New York City, and everything was great. Well, fast forward a few years, and Mussolini takes a different turn, and he hooks up with Hitler, and Balbo is dead set against his hookup with Hitler, and Mussolini ships him to Libya, and he is mysteriously shot down by his own people in an accident. Now, some people rumored think that they did it, but Balbo had no association with the bad Mussolini. He was with the good Mussolini, and his accomplishment is, hands down, aviation-wise, just an astronomical thing. And I think, unfortunately, in 2019, we Italian Americans don't have a lot of strength. We don't have power. We don't have voter power. So if you don't have voter power with a politician, you're nothing. Well, in the city of Chicago, we're not very strong voter-wise. So we're an easy target. And for some reason, you get these politicians, and every once in a while they go, who can I stand on and get away with it? Because I'm going to get a lot of publicity. So they come up with, oh my God, we got to get rid of this monument because this is horrible. And they think that there's going to be nobody defending it. So and then the papers, the last time this came up, an alderman of the city of Chicago, elected official, made a statement in the Chicago Sun-Times that said, there's nothing in Italy that even honors Balbo. I proceeded to email this young lady, and I said, there's thousands of places in Italy that honor. And she returned the email and said, no, that's not Italo Balbo, that's Cesare Balbo, and he was a writer. Well, lo and behold, a certain professor from Loyola University was even in Italy at the time and sent me a picture of a bust of Italo Balbo in Rome with the address, which I forwarded this picture with the address and the bust to this alderman. She didn't return the email then. Now that's just wrong. You can't say lies and just get away with it. The people that want to take this monument away and the street sign away, their knowledge is that of a kindergartner when it comes to Balbo. I am not a smart man, but I've learned through people, and I know a smart man gets information before he does this. So the reasons to want to take it away are totally ridiculous, and there is this overall theme in the United States of America to do away with history. Let's get away with it. Oh my God, why is it Balbo? Let's change it to somebody else. Well, you know what? Certain things should stay. It's unfortunate, okay? George Washington should always be on the dollar bill. Was he a bad guy? It's apples and oranges. Even with Columbus, we're fighting this battle that they want to get rid of Columbus Day because Columbus was such a bad guy. He lived hundreds of years ago. You cannot put him to what today's standards are. That could be so many people in history. So I will always fight. I don't know if I'll win. My heart is in the right place. There's nothing for me to gain personally in the slightest, but I'm through and through. When I go 100%, no, I go 180%. Okay, so we will defend it. We may lose. It's terrible that this comes up. That is the last artifact from the Chicago 1933 World's Fair. That is a 2,000-year-old artifact. That's not hurting anybody. The only thing we need to do is to put a little plaque next to it to say what this is, because people walk by and they don't know what it is.
Yeah.
So
what kind
you a little scared with this? With me?
No, right, you're good. So what do you think Italian Americans need then?
Okay, what do they need? Boy, they need a lot. They need a lot. I realize we're never going to have those neighborhoods again. Never going to be. People come from Italy now. The few that come, because we have small numbers, they don't want to live near Italians. I mean, that's the way it is. This is all truth. So we've been watered down. You got that guy that's last name is Martino. Tony Martino. Oh, wow, he's Italian. Tony Martino might be a descendant of a Tony Martino that married someone who wasn't Italian. Now, those kids are 50%. Now, he married somebody who wasn't Italian. Now, those kids are 25%. Now, he married somebody who wasn't Italian. Now, those kids are 12.5%. And this Tony Martino that we see today is 12.5% Italian-American. Is he really very Italian? No. And unfortunately, that's what we have watered down. So how can we do anything to salvage? Well, I think about this all the time. I think that just what's left of us have to actively seek to somehow expose our kids in just some capacity. Take them to an Italian fest. Show them something of home, of history. We have unbelievable amounts of things to be proud of. And that alderman that did that to me, if you want to dissect history, her descendants and my descendants, it's not even ridiculously close. So why are you going to put us down? That's a joke. But unfortunately, 1,000 years later, if people don't defend it, it gets squashed. So all these great things are going to get squashed. So I just think we just, like I said, actively seek to do something. I realize you're not going to sit the kid here and go, you're Italian, okay, that's a crazy person. But just, something, a history lesson, a little bit of the language. I'm going to come up with a bucket list for Italian Americans. Okay? Stuff that they should do. Watch a certain movie, read a certain book. You had no idea what you were getting into when you told me to come here, did you? When you talk about having an opinion about things, okay? And I'm sorry, but that's the way I feel. And like I said, one thing with me, I don't just do this. Okay, a lot of people talk a good game. A lot of people are worried about, taking a picture for the newspaper. I can care less. I don't have agendas. I don't need anybody to say, wow, great job. In my heart, when I go to bed at night and look in the mirror, I know what I did, and that's all that matters. And I will do the work. I will go the extra mile. And like I said, we might fail, but boy, damn it, we're going to go down fighting.
All right, so kind of, you said that there was the alderman who was not supportive of the Italian America agenda, basically, right?
Exactly.
Were there any, of your knowledge, is there enough representation in politics of Italian Americans? How do you feel?
Absolutely not. There isn't enough representation. And if there is, here's the deal with a politician. Who's my constituents? Who's voting? Now, we don't have those kind of numbers and we don't have that unity, so it just is not going to happen. It's just never going to happen again. And that's really, it's sad. And therefore, like I said, these people that wanted to take that monument away and change that name, truthfully, they have no knowledge. They don't have a clue. Someone whispered in their ear and said, hey, this guy was fascist. Now fascism's a bad word. Back then it wasn't, but now it's a bad word. So it's like, hey, let's take what is this stupid thing doing here in Chicago? We got to get rid of this thing. And if you sat down like this and had a discussion and taught me why we should get rid of it, fine, God bless. But when you don't even have a clue, that's a joke. Now, a small number of us went to a certain meeting for Chicago and encountered this alderman, and she was really surprised that there was anybody there to defend. And she because I don't know anything about this, and they don't know politicians don't want to look stupid, okay? So did that have an effect on the overall outcome of this? I think it did a little bit. I don't think exclusively, but I think it did a little bit. So unfortunately, from what I've been told from the people that's been involved, every so many years this comes up. Every decade it comes up. So, and now you know what I'm really worried about? There's I know some really smart people. I know a guy that's the expert of Italo Balbo. What happens one day when he's not here? See, as an ethnic group, we're not reproducing those kind of people, and then we're going to have a problem. So, but I can't do anything for the future, and I can't do anything for the past. I can only do for now. But I'm going to do.
let's see. How would you define the Italian-American experience in Chicago then?
Mine are what people think or what people
Yours.
say. Okay, mine, I'm a funny guy. Like, if I say something about me, I had to earn that title. I'm not joking, okay? So for me, it is my identity. Okay, I am Frank and I'm an Italian American. It's always been like that. I genuinely, one story. The movie Rocky, you're familiar? Mm-hmm. The original Rocky.
All right.
I think it was around, it was like 76, 77. So, by my house, there was a movie theater called the Montclair Theater. It was on Grand Avenue in Chicago. And they showed the movie Rocky. It was like $1. And I was taken there. And honest to God, at the end of the movie, when there's the fight scene, the boxing scene, literally, everybody in the movie theater is Italian American. And they're screaming and like you would have thought you were at a live boxing match. This is a movie. And there again, had an effect on me. Like I left that theater, I'm this little kid, and I'm ready to like run through a brick wall, okay? So with me, partially the reason I named my show even Keeping It Real with Frankie D. They called me Frankie D when I was a kid. And keeping it real because one thing with me, I'm not that smart, I'm not that talented, but I'm real. I'm not fake. I never fake anything. I'm an Italian American, and all these stories and all these experiences are real. I genuinely, as a teenager, when there was a boxer, Ray Boom Boom Mancini, and when he boxed, I just felt the pride because he was one of our guys, and he had the Italian flag in his shorts, and I get emotional about it. I've always been that way. I don't know why, I've just been that way. So when I do, everything I do it from sincerity and from the heart.
Alright, so do you have any future aspirations then?
Besides scaring people, because I think I'm so strongly into, my wife constantly is, will you stop, will you stop, will you stop? I can't, and I have to simmer down because there aren't a lot of people like me, and maybe that's a good thing for the world, or maybe it's not, I don't know. So future things, yes, absolutely. I definitely want to keep my podcast going. I'm hoping one day to have a lot more free time beyond Jerry's Grill, and I would like to take the show on the road, and I want to somehow, and I'm not sure how, but I want to affect in a positive way young Italian Americans as far as their ethnic background. And I don't know what the answer is, and I wish somebody would tell me, but I want to do stuff like that. I definitely will continue to do more things. A lot of Italian American things, I definitely will. I'm not the type of guy that sits back. One of my favorite sayings is something to the effect of, at the very end, when it all comes down, I want to be totally worn out, just beat up and say, holy shit, what a ride for life. Because I don't need to rest and all that to get old and die. I want to go. So I hope to do more things. I hope to, we have a center at Casa Italia, and maybe I get a little involved with that. I'm the type of guy, my mind is going, and when I'm driving a car, I get ideas, and I have a little piece of paper, pad of paper and pen in the car, and I got to write things down because I just constantly am getting ideas, and some of them fail, some are bad, and some of them aren't so bad, and I hope to accomplish those things, and I kind of started with some friends, but I'm kind of the main guy. You always need that one guy that'll go out and do it, and I'm a firm believer in build it and they shall come. And we started doing these dinners around the Harlem Avenue area. It's all guys, just guys, and we do maybe like 4 a year, and sometimes it's just dinner. We just get together, we have fun. I get up and say a few things about current things going on. Once in a while, we'll raise money strictly for an Italian American cause. Maybe that's a bad thing. Some people get mad about that because we should do for everybody. Well, I'm the type of guy, charity begins at home. So I'm a big believer with that. I'm really a minority. And and it's okay because I have a strong personality, and I really enjoy the dinners because these guys that come, I think they, I don't know, they make me feel good. I think they believe in me, I think I'm a man of my word. I give you what I got. I'll do what I say. I treat you with respect, and I think it shows with that because they always back me with this stuff. Half the times I don't think they even know what the hell I'm talking about, but they back me, which makes me feel good. And I know that I'm kind of a guy of the people, a regular guy, because that's what I am. So I hope we can grow in numbers, and there's power in numbers, and maybe get somewhere.
Absolutely. Well, I think you definitely have the passion and drive to keep this going, for sure.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for letting me interview you.
Absolutely. I hope, like I said, I did not scare you in any way. This is a subject that really touches a chord in me, you know what I mean?
That's
so,
awesome.
But thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.